Howie Roseman being put on the Mount Rushmore of NFL GMs is one key storyline you'll see if the Eagles win the Super Bowl. What other storylines could follow the result of Super Bowl 59? We'll get into that on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. Today's episode, it is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. This is the last show until Super Bowl 59. Our next podcast on Locked On Eagles will be recapping whether or not the Eagles won a championship down in New Orleans. If they do this, if they pull it off and they take down Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, the dynasty of the Chiefs that's won 3 championships in the last 6 years, if they stop them from becoming the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight, there are so many incredible storylines that I cannot wait to get into for the next 7 months, right? I think the biggest one, though, that I'll probably have, that I'll start with on that podcast, is Howie Roseman joining the Mount Rushmore of NFL general managers. Like, if the Eagles pull this off, and it's regardless of how they do it, whether Jalen Hurts throws for 350 yards and has 3 touchdowns passing and 1 rushing, if it's Saquon Barkley that has 200 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 70-yarder in the fourth quarter to ice the game, whether it's Jalen Carter having 2 sacks or Quinyon Mitchell having 2 interceptions, nobody's going to look better with a win on Sunday stopping the Chiefs than Howie Roseman because of the way he put this roster together with how perfect the offense and defense are from a personnel perspective. There are no holes, very little flaws in this roster. And at that point, Howie Roseman would now have 2 Super Bowl rings in under a decade with completely different looking rosters. Different looking head coaches, different looking quarterbacks. Literally, I'm saying that they are completely different people, not that they look different. You beat Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Then you beat Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid. Considering Howie is like one of the only consistent variables of those teams outside of Lane Johnson and Brandon Graham, nobody deserves more credit for this unbelievable run since 2017 than Howie. And I would go as far as saying it is so difficult to do what he's done, to find the consistency in chaos, consistency in such rapid change like Howie has done, to find that consistency with different teams. It's one of the hardest things you can do in the NFL as a general manager. And to me, even though he doesn't have, 5 to 6 rings yet, I think he's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time NFL GMs when you also look at the fact that he's reinvented the league. Like, he has just been so creative and started the trade era of the NFL back in 2016 and in 2017. The way he collected picks afterwards. The way that, he, when everybody else was not paying running backs, he goes in and brings in Saquon Barkley. When he has a franchise quarterback that he pays over $100 million, he's drafted another quarterback in the second round, whether we like it or not. I mean, Howie Roseman has done so many incredible, groundbreaking things as a GM that I think one of the big storylines, if they win this football game on Sunday and there's confetti and another parade on Broad Street next week, the number one storyline is Howie Roseman, give him the gold jacket. He's a Hall of Famer. He is an all-time great general manager. I already think he is that. But 2 rings, that's when you start getting into legacy talk. Like, we had a podcast last week about how legacy is impacted based on this Super Bowl win for the Eagles. Whose legacy is the most impacted? 1 ring is nice. There's a lot of teams that have 1 ring. The majority of the NFL has 1 ring. 2, that's when you start talking about a potential dynasty. That's when you start talking about greatness. And for Howie, it's going to be his 2nd ring. Not a lot of other Eagles on this team. It's going to be their first. But for Howie, it's number 2. And I really do think that's going to be a crucial storyline if they win this game that I'm going to talk about on the podcast. A storyline if the Eagles lose, I think you're going to see a lot, is that it's the greatest team of all time in Eagles history, just caught in the wrong era. It's the greatest Eagles core in NFL history that just got caught in a time where the greatest dynasty in NFL history existed. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid winning 3 straight Super Bowls, winning 4 Super Bowls in 6 seasons. The only other teams to win it are the Rams and the Buccaneers. Like, that is something that I think you'll see talked about a lot, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of blame in Philadelphia. I don't think you're going to see a lot of fingers pointed to the Eagles if they lose this game, because what were you supposed to do differently? Like, what was Howie supposed to do differently building this roster? What was Nick Sirianni supposed to do differently? Like, yeah, they'll be criticized if they make mistakes in game, but there's nothing about a loss on Sunday that says, here comes rapid change. You need to do this, this, and this in the offseason. The Eagles are so far away, and they didn't win because of this. They never fixed. Like, no. This team has been so dominant and so balanced and so versatile, and they've won in so many different ways, and they've beaten so many good teams this year that it's like, just stay the course. Like, this will pass too. Just steady, easy. It's not sexy, and there's not a lot of hot takes in that, and you're going to see hot take culture flowing around after the Super Bowl. But I think what you'll also see is there's not going to be a lot of attacks on Philly if they get this done. If they don't get this done, it's going to be more so, look, this is a generational team. This is the LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. That's a great team with one of the best duos in NBA history. But guess what? They're peaking at a time where the maybe most dominant NBA team of all time exists with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Like, that's how I'm going to feel, at least, because I do think this is the golden era of Eagles football. The 2021 to 2024 run right now, this is peak Eagles football, even though they haven't got the ring yet that the 2017 team did. And that was a great run. I think in 2017, they don't get enough credit for what they did in 18 and 19 too, considering the circumstances. That was a great era, and that's the era that got it done. They won the championship. But this is the most dominant, most talented Eagles era we've ever seen, even over the early 2000s too. So that's going to be a main thing that I think about is like, damn, are they just not, and it's not just the Eagles, but Josh Allen and the Bills, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I'm going to start to wonder, are all these all-time great players and teams, are their legacies going to be defined by the fact that they just can't beat one guy? Like, that's going to be a big storyline if they lose. If they win, storyline number 2, Saquon Barkley resurrects the running back position. He caps off the greatest running back season of all time. Like, how can that not be one of the top things that you talk about? Like, when you're a journalist, during a game, you're preparing to write articles about both sides. You're writing on one computer the angle and the story about them winning. Then on the other computer, you're doing the opposite. Like, that's just the way we were taught to do it in journalism school. If the Eagles are in a close game against the Chiefs and Saquon Barkley's having a great game, I'm getting ready to write that Saquon Barkley's about to be a running back, a position that is seen as anybody can do it. The production it's not important. You can find it at a dime a dozen in the draft, in free agency by paying nobody, unrestricted free agency. Like, this is a position that really doesn't matter, and it's carried by other positions in coaching, right? If a player at that position is the reason one of the greatest dynasties ever, the greatest quarterback, maybe head coach combo ever, doesn't three-peat, that's one of the coolest stories in the history of sports. And all he needs is 30 yards to break Terrell Davis's all-time record for most rushing yards combined in a regular season and single playoff. Listen to this stat I saw today, too. He's also, not only is he dominating from a total yardage perspective, it's the explosive plays that we just can't stop focusing on. Saquon is one of 54 players all time to score 20 scrimmage touchdowns in one season when you include the postseason. He is the only player in NFL history to average in that group of 54 players. He's the only one who has averaged at least 30 yards a touchdown, 32 and a half to be exact. If they win this game, one of the headlines is going to be Saquon Barkley revived a dead-in-the-water position by stopping a three-peat with the greatest season in the history of the position. And for him to do it in Philadelphia, to win Offensive Player of the Year, in a city, a team that just has not invested much in this position since they traded Shady McCoy away back in 2015, 10 years ago, and he was a former rival in the NFC East with the New York Giants, that's going to be a top 2 story that I talk about for sure. There are so many awesome stories that we'll get into if there is confetti on Sunday that comes down midnight green. Some storylines we'll get into as well if they lose. We're trying to prepare for both sides. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We'll continue that on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. This Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Betterhelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags we should avoid, right? But what if we focus more on identifying the positive signs in our relationship, those green flags? If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, you're married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills and empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch, you can do it anytime for no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon for 10% off your first month of online therapy. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. One final show until Super Bowl 59 between the Eagles and the Chiefs. Almost said 57. I hope it's not 57. We need to rewrite history for the Philadelphia Eagles. And today I'm getting into storylines that you could see whether the Eagles win against Kansas City or whether they lose. A bunch of storylines you'll see from segment 1. Howie Roseman, if they win, he joins the Mount Rushmore for one of the greatest GMs in NFL history. If they lose, right team, wrong time. The golden era of Eagles football just caught in an era where the most dominant team ever exists. And then another story, if they win, Saquon Barkley resurrects the running back position, stopping the three-peat, having the greatest single season a running back has ever had. If they lose, and again, I do not think they're gonna, but if they lose, I could also see if there's one thing we'll be critical of, I think if they lose it's because they could not establish the passing game early, explosive plays weren't there, maybe they were making mistakes, a rare turnover from Jalen Hurts. Like, that's the scenario I could see playing out. If that happens, I think what you'll see, at least from, and again, these storylines are what I would do on the podcast, not what I think other people are going to talk about. It's kind of where my head would go. I'm trying to prepare. This episode is more for me, like, it's a therapeutic session of me just getting ready for every scenario. That's my anxious type A brain, getting ready for whatever is going to happen on Sunday and how I'll feel after as a result. Something else I'll think of if the result is the passing game was inconsistent or, the run game just wasn't enough to get the job done and Pat Mahomes catches fire and you need more. I think something I'll say, you got to get back to being more balanced next year. Like, yes, being all in on Saquon Barkley and running the football this year, running the football more than any team in the NFL did. It was the right call. Again, Saquon Barkley and this offensive line had the best rushing season in NFL history. So of course you lean into that. It's what saved your season after you were 2-2 coming out of the bye week. But I will say, and I'm not saying next year don't still be a run-first offense that still has Saquon Barkley the majority of the time being your Batman. But I don't think what they did this year is sustainable. You need to be more balanced long-term. I still think passing the football, being a top-tier passing offense, is how you'll consistently get to championships. And I also think Saquon Barkley is not getting any younger. At this point, he's going to be, 27 years old. He does have an injury history. He stayed healthy this year, but he took on a lot of touches. He touched the football this year more than any NFL player in the league did. So I think next year, and especially if you want to keep him healthy for the postseason, you want to keep him fresh for the playoffs, I don't think he can endure back-to-back seasons of a workload that he had this year. So if they do lose, something that I'm going to start to focus on quickly in the offseason is, okay, that was great. That was the right move to run the football as much as they did, but how do we get back to having the Eagles be more balanced? How do we get back to being a team that wants to throw 30-plus times because we know we can do it? And I still think they can do it. Jalen Hurts has shown many times, including the NFC Championship, the game against Pittsburgh, the game against Cincinnati and Dallas and Jacksonville. There's been a lot of them that still show he can be a top-tier passer in a lot of games. So that would be something that I say, okay, now how do we reshape the identity of the offense? Because it has to be ever evolving, especially if you have a new play caller. What do we do? How do we focus on the passing game? Do we kind of lean into what Kellen Moore did this year? Do we go back to trying to maximize Jalen Hurts' strengths with the deep ball, the vertical game? Do we try to go all in on the RPO style? Like, what do we still kind of blend it with, Sirianni's concepts in a new play caller? I think that's going to be a really interesting topic to dive into, is what the identity of the offense is again next year, what the identity of the passing game is. That's something that they're going to have to address, because although it's still going to run through Saquon, I'm not saying next year go back to who you were in even 2017, 2022. Last year, Jalen Hurts the run game was inconsistent with DeAndre Swift. Jalen Hurts was throwing the football a lot. You were winning because of Jalen throwing the first 11 games of the year. But I don't think you can have Saquon carry you the way he did this year. If you want Saquon to try to carry you in the postseason and you want him to last long term, and it's not just a one and done type of stint with Philadelphia, I mean, you remember, this is a 3-year contract, so you want to get all of that out of Saquon. Then you got to stay balanced. You got to keep him healthy. That's something you're going to think about no matter what, win or lose. But if they lose, I'm going to instantly start diving into, as a coping mechanism, how to get back on track next year. Not how to get back on track, but how to win a championship. And that'll be something that I talk about 100%. Another one, if they win. Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback, and there's nothing more that you can say. Like, the debate is over. A ring, an all-time Super Bowl performance in 2022, making the playoffs in all 4 of his first 4 years as a starting quarterback in the NFL. The way his win percentage is up there with the all-time greats. He's going to break the rushing touchdown record of Cam Newton. He has the rushing touchdown record in a single season. He'll have beaten Pat Mahomes in a Super Bowl. He's only 26 years old. Yeah, you might still take Josh Allen, who's the MVP. I would too. Pat Mahomes. Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson, I think they are better. They'll be ranked ahead. It's debatable if he's a top 4 quarterback or top 3. It won't be debatable anymore if he's top 5. There's going to be no more of this dumb conjecture about Justin Herbert and CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence even last year getting thrown into this conversation. You're not going to see that. Jaden Daniels, yeah, he's on the rise. Like, he's coming. And I think he's a top, you could say 7, top 10 quarterback for sure. I'd say top 7 right now. He's this year's version of Stroud last year. But they're not going to be ahead of Jalen Hurts. No, it's not going to matter anymore. The style of what it looks like, I think people are going to they're going to sound really dumb if they don't put Jalen Hurts in their top 5 list when it comes to quarterback. I think that's going to be something, if he gets this done, even if he doesn't have a game where he throws for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he's got 180 and a touchdown, no picks, but he completes 70% of his balls, and then he runs for 50 yards and has 2 rushing touchdowns, that's an elite performance from Jalen Hurts. 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards, dominated on the ground, probably had some explosive throws as well, didn't turn the ball over. That's elite, just in a different way. I've said it all the time on this show. It looks a little bit different. It looks a lot like what Russell Wilson used to do and Cam Newton, but elite is elite. And if he wins, the conversation is going to be over. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback. I think you can already make that case. 2 Super Bowls in 3 years is really hard to do. Pat Mahomes himself gave Jalen his flowers in his press conference yesterday. If he wins it, though, and he has a ring at 26, that resume, you're going to sound like you are reaching if Hurts is not in your top 5, especially if it's like a social media quarterback like Justin Herbert. All right, and my final storyline, if they lose, and it's a positive one, though, this team's not going anywhere. The window is wide open. And yes, the NFL stands for not for long for a reason. We thought after 2017, the Eagles would be back in the Super Bowl with that same core. That core didn't get back there. It was a different one in 22. We thought in 2022 when they lost, they'll be back there next year. Last year's collapse happens. You're not guaranteed tomorrow, and they need to take advantage of the moment they're in now, because you never know how, I think this window's wide open with the core they have, but rosters always change. And, sometimes the best of the best. Like Josh Allen and the Bills. Look at the Bills. Like, they have yet to get to a Super Bowl. Sometimes it takes 5 to 6 years of knocking on the door and you can't get in. So you're not guaranteed anything. So you need to get this done. But I will say they are going to be knocking on the door every year. This is not going to be like 2017 where the window closes, this team ages quickly like milk. No. I mean, when you look at the average age of each starter, on defense, they're all under the age of 27 outside of Darius Slay. I mean, they are the youngest defense in football. So now you've established a young core on defense finally. You have everybody locked up on offense. They're all in their prime, right? Who are the big guys that are leaving even? Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Zach Bond's the one guy you got to keep. But let's say you lose even. I want to keep Milton Williams. Trust me, I want to keep Mekhi Becton. I want to keep Josh Sweat if the numbers look right. But if you lose those guys, are you terrified of regressing next year like you did in 2023? I'm not. The window is wide open. This is not, it'll feel like a last hurrah because you've been there twice in 3 years. And so it feels like this is the moment to do it. This is the redemption story. And if you don't get it there, it's like, damn, well, what next? But this isn't as crazy as it sounds after making 2 Super Bowls. This isn't the end. They are going to be here for a long time. And the way the NFC is shaping up, yeah, Jaden Daniels looks really good. And the Commanders are going to be a problem in your division. And I think the Cowboys are going to be better next year. They're going to get healthier. The NFC North has 3 good teams that won double-digit games. The NFC's good, but it's still not great. The Eagles are still, to me, by far the best team in that conference. And that's not going to change next year, or I don't even think the year after. So something I'll think about, at least in a positive perspective, if they lose this game is they can have more opportunities. Again, you got to get it done now. It's very hard to get back there. The Eagles have said it themselves after they won the NFC Championship. But the roster that Howie Roseman set up for the future looks really good. So there are 6 storylines for you, 3 on each side. I'm preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I'm expecting the best, though. I do think the Eagles are going to get this done on Sunday and win Super Bowl 59. My final predictions coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. I can feel the butterflies in my stomach as we speak. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, like just take the Saquon Barkley or Jalen Hurts anytime rushing touchdown, boom, you won it. That's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Today's show is also sponsored by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. All you got to do, pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with 1 more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board. I'm going to take more on Dallas Goedert's receiving yards. I'm going to take more as well for Jalen Hurts' passing yardage. What I love most, fast and safe withdrawals on PrizePicks. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play $5. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, we're wrapping up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. We're wrapping up Super Bowl coverage, and that's crazy. I can't believe we made it 2 sleeps, and then it is Super Bowl 59, Eagles Chiefs. Just want to thank you all for riding with me here, making me your every first listen each and every day. The everydayers out there that allowed me to have that experience in New Orleans at Media Day. It has been one of the most memorable, most enjoyable seasons, not just being a fan of this team, but covering this team in my entire life. I mean, it's been such a dream come true to do this show in 2024. It's my favorite Eagles team of all time. I've said that on the show multiple times. And I love that 2010 team, 2017. The 2019 Eagles has a special place in my heart. Same with the 2022 Birds. But I love this team. And I want this one. I want this more than I wanted it in 2017. Like, that was the first one. But this one's just different. You could stop history. You could stop a three-peat. You could beat the Chiefs. Nobody wants Kansas City to win this game. You could beat one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. To get your second ring, your first 2 Super Bowl wins within a decade would be by beating the 2 best players that ever played this sport. To do that with a brand new core, with as young of a team as this is, how exciting the future will look, and it's going to no matter what, as I said, but it'll look a whole lot brighter if they win this title. It would be so cool to see them get revenge from 2022, to overcome the collapse of last year. Just so many awesome stories if they win this game. And I think they're going to do it. I really do. I think they're going to get this done. I can totally see them similar to Super Bowl 57. They come out guns a-blazing. They're aggressive. They're having success both passing the football and running the ball. I think it's going to be a balanced attack. Jalen Hurts is going to look sharp. They're going to build up a lead. And unlike last time, unlike having Miles Sanders at running back, this time around they have Saquon Barkley, and that's all the difference. That's gonna be what it takes to get this done. And they're going to kick the hell out of the Chiefs defense in the second half with time of possession. They are not going to let Pat Mahomes have the ball at the end to win the game like he always does. That's going to be the difference. It's very similar to the last game where I think the Eagles are going to build up a lead, but they're not giving it back. Because now they can pin their ears back, they can control the ball, keep Mahomes off the field, lean on their offensive line, lean on Saquon Barkley. Hopefully Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens aren't limited in any way. Those two are warriors. They battled through injury in the NFC title. They're going to play in this game. Brandon Graham's going to play. Like, that's another reason I want this one bad. Send off BG. Year 15, he retires with his second ring. The guy that's put this uniform on more than any player in franchise history. I mean, come on. They got to do this. Like, you could see the focus in their eyes. Like, I could tell at media day, they didn't want to answer any of those questions. They want it to be Sunday. They're not enjoying the experience like they did 2 years ago. They loved, I don't want to say they got too caught up in the spectacle. They didn't, but you could see that they were enjoying it. They were taking it all in. A lot of these guys had never been there before, and of course you do that. This time around, there's more of a focus in their eyes. They're locked in. They really are, and I think they're going to win. This is the right roster to beat. If anybody's going to beat Kansas City, if a team was built to beat Kansas City, Howie Roseman built the Eagles to beat the Chiefs, and I think they're going to do it. Man, I hope they do. Final score prediction. I don't think it's another 30-plus game for both teams. I don't think it's going to be a defensive performance either. It's not going to be like Panthers-Broncos. But I'll say Eagles 31, Chiefs 24, Chiefs 25. Eagles 31, Chiefs 25. Somebody gets a last-minute pick, or not a last-minute pick. I'll say with like 9 to 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, Quinyon Mitchell or Reed Blankenship gets a pick. And you're going to be like, oh no, the Eagles are going to go score, but the Chiefs are going to have just enough time, just like last time on the clock, to win it. And it's going to be the same scenario, but this time, like I said, they're not giving the ball back. The Eagles have a classic vintage 5 to 8 minute drive where they just kill off the rest of the quarter and they win the game. And I hope it's not based off a game-winning field goal where like Jake Elliott has to kick as time expires. That I saw somebody tweet that today. That would put me in the hospital. I don't think that's the scenario that plays out, but I think that's going to be the way it ends, is the Eagles say, nope, Mahomes, you're not stay over there. Keep your helmet off. You're not getting the ball back. And how cool would that be to watch Mahomes on the sideline this time around, have the roles reversed, and know that there's nothing he can do about it this time. And then watch him and Travis Kelce walk off the field in green confetti. Watch Taylor Swift out there in green confetti. Console Travis Kelce. Ooh, I want it. I want it so bad. I'm so nervous, but I'm confident at the same time. It's nerves because of the stakes. What's at stake here? History is on the line, but I am confident this team can do it. I'll be in Philly for it. I'll see you guys there. I'm going to be at JJ Bootleggers with the 4th and John boys with Gail Saunders for their watch party. have a post-game show for you guys right afterwards, right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks as always for making us your first listen each and every day. Let's go win a championship, everybody. Relax for a day, and then we'll see you back here on Locked On Eagles after Super Bowl 59.